Welcome back. For the purposes of the 200 level e-learning modules, we're going to explore three fundamental questions when it comes to learning and development. Those questions are, what are the intended outcomes or end results we are striving for? What actions do we need to take to accomplish said goal? And what type of person do I need to be to execute these tasks? These can also be referred to goal orientation, task orientation, and role orientation. For the communication theme, we are seeking to explore to understand the following. How can we ensure clear lines of communication between myself and my student athletes, and my student athletes among themselves? What types of action can be taken to increase levels of communication? How can I work on my listening skills as an essential form of communication? Let's dive in. How can we ensure clear lines of communication between myself and my student athletes among themselves? Before we get into the how, let's explore the what it is we're looking for. What does clear lines of communication even mean? In early models of communication, this is referred to transactional communication. This looks like the source relaying a specific message through a channel like written or verbal communication to the receiver. This is a one-way form of communication that only moves from the source to the receiver. The noise in this context, and all models of communication, refers to external stimulus, like other coaches or other teams, or even your spectators. The source in this example could be the coach, relaying a motivational speech mid-game or skill development instruction during a practice to the receiver, who would be the student athlete. Moving beyond transactional communication, we can provide a feedback loop for the receiver. This still looks like the source relaying a specific message through a specific channel to the intended audience or the receiver, but the receiver has the opportunity to provide feedback. This can look like asking questions or clarification on team policies or instruction, or even just making their attitudes and opinions known on the message they received and interpreted. Moving even beyond feedback loops, we move into what we call transformational communication. Transformational communication provides the expectation that communication is a two-way street, where the source is relaying a specific message to the receiver, and there is the expectation that the receiver can provide feedback to the source. This is true between coaches and student athletes among themselves. In order for there to be an expectation that the receiver can provide feedback to the source, you need to ensure high levels of psychological safety as well as team cohesion and connection. In terms of lines of communication and establishing clear lines of communication, we're referring to the message and the feedback being exchanged in between the source and the receiver. Lines of communication can include structure, the team handbook, team meetings, your website, and other aspects of structure that we can explore in that module. Lines of communication can also include verbal communication and instruction, nonverbal communication, various channels such as written or social media. What types of action can be taken to increase levels of communication? In order to understand what types of actions are necessary to increase communication, we must understand how we can reduce barriers to communication. Barriers to communication can include vocabulary, not having enough knowledge on a specific subject area, not having enough trust in the sender, and the attitude of the sender or the receiver, external influences, time pressure, noise, age differences, or worry, specifically worrying how the message will be received. So, in order to understand what types of action can be taken, we must first reverse engineer the question to what types of action can be taken to reduce barriers to communication. We'll discuss this further in the Learning Applications video. And finally, how can I work on my listening skills as an essential form of communication? Listening is defined as the process of receiving, attending to, and assign meaning to oral and visual stimuli, which is to say that listening is how you react to receiving information. Listening includes attending and receiving, understanding, remembering, evaluation, and responding. Listening is a process that can be rehearsed, developed, and improved over time. To increase your listening effectiveness, you'll want to focus on the following best practices. Increase your empathy to improve your objective listening skills. Evaluate your non-judgmental and critical listening skills to ensure you are not jumping to conclusions to formulating your response too early. Pay attention to surface and nonverbal cues. What is your student athlete's body language and tone saying? And focus on staying present. Noise and context will impact how you receive information. We'll dive into all of these questions a little further in the Learning Applications module next.